Hello you, it's me. Today we're going to talk about Elantris by Brandon Sanderson, which is the first book of his I have ever read. I'm going to apologise straight away because I haven't looked up how to pronounce any of the names in this book, so you all get to have fun laughing at that. Or maybe I'll get it 100% totally correct first time. Going into Brandon Sanderson stuff, I'm told by a lot of people this is a big interconnected web, and 10 books down the line I'm going to be noticing references to stuff that's been happening the whole time. So I was reading this pretty carefully, making a lot of notes. I was sort of bursting with theories the whole way through this book. I'm going to have a big wall covered in paper and bits of red string by the time I'm done with this. So I'm going to give a plot rundown, spoiler-free things, bits I liked, bits I didn't like, and then some questions I have at the end, conspiracy-type bits. And before we kick off, I'm also guest hosting / co-hosting a read-along for this, which is the COSMERE CRABALONG. We're reading all of Sanderson's stuff, going to try and smash through the whole lot by the end of 2021. So join us for the live show each month, which I will link on my Twitter, so follow me on Twitter down below. And we've got a really good Discord chat for these books as we read them, which is fantastic, especially for people getting into it, because you have the opinions of all these people who've been fans for years. So I'll link that down below, join that as well. I'll also link the channels of the hosts and the other co-hosts. Make sure you follow them because they are quality channels. So don't forget to like and subscribe to follow me on this fantastic magical Sanderson journey. What's your favourite Sanderson book? How long have you been a super fan? Tell me in the comments. So, without further ado, there's an affliction called the Sheod, which strikes completely randomly in the population, turns people's hair silver, their skin a pallid metallic colour, grants them the ability to use symbols called aeons to work magic and bend the world to their will. These long-lived, fast-healing individuals would gravitate towards Elantris, a city of light, majesty and beauty, to live in peace among others like them, and provide help to the surrounding countries. Or at least, that's how it used to work. 10 years ago, the Sheod was corrupted. Now when it strikes, it turns your skin black and oily. Your hair falls out and you become immortal. Kind of. Time no longer affects you, and any injury you get is permanent. Out of fear and superstition, the city of Elantris is walled off, and anybody from then affected by the Sheod is dumped inside the now closed walls, which is in effect a leper colony. A magicless, crumbling, grime-covered city, filled with Elantrians driven mad by eternal pain. Prince Raoden of the nearby city Kay is taken by the Sheod and dumped inside the gates of Elantris. Princess Serene arrives in the city from the neighbouring country of Teod to marry Raoden and forge an alliance between their two countries, and is promptly told her husband-to-be is dead, but the marriage is still allowed to cement the alliance and various trade deals. After the fall of Elantris 10 years ago, the city of Kay is governed by a merchant-turned-king. Serene sees the weakness that he has and sets herself to improving the situation of the common people. Unfortunately, Horathan also sees the weakness of Kay's monarchy. A priest sent from Fjorden, a huge conquest-bent country in the east, and he's a missionary sent to spread the Derethi religion and essentially annex Arelon, the country of which Kay is the capital, and denounce the rumours of past Elantrian magic as frauds and lies. He seeks to do this by peaceful means of conversion, but works to a deadline. The head of his religious order promises that if he's not successful, within a few months, Kay will face the sword. In the dead city of Elantris, Raoden seeks to rile the desperate, wretched citizens, to break the gang warfare that holds the city in its grip, and discover what happened to the magic, what corrupted the Sheod. Can it be cured? I've also got the 10th anniversary edition, which has a few extra bits right at the end, which I'll talk about later. By a lot of the people I've spoken to, this is considered to be one of the least good Sanderson books. But honestly, I thought this was such a good start and a great intro into his work for somebody who's not familiar with him. By all accounts, it's only uphill from here, which is very exciting considering how much I enjoyed this a lot. This has been tweaked and perfected to death. This is the 10th draft of this book, and it took him years to get it exactly how he wanted it. A lot of work went into this, and honestly it shows. All I will say is that initially, this was super daunting to me, because I just do not read high fantasy at all, really. This is a very slow burn book, with the tension and the story really building over the first 3/4 of it. But it's not a slow book, and I actually smashed through this in about 3 or 4 days. There were long stretches, especially after the halfway mark, where I just could not put this book down at all. Firstly, straight away with fantasy-based novels that so heavily involve magic, you go into it expecting the magic system to be sort of closely examined. In this, you have a magic system that's clearly part of something bigger, that's clearly going to be addressed more in later books. And I do still have a lot of questions about the mechanics of it, which I'm interested to find out how exactly it works still. I'll talk about that more on the other side of the spoiler line. One of the things that I think worked well in this book and actually was super clever was that you go into a world where the magic is pretty much gone, with people trying to get it back, which means you learn about it with people in the story who are also learning about it and trying to piece it together. It's very organic and it removes the need for any kind of writer's convenience. The physical world build seems good. Everything seems to be tied into the Riod, which was the corruption of the Sheod, the event that caused the downfall of Elantris. This means you don't get a heck of a lot of general world history before 10 years previous to when this book is set. There's a heck of a lot of name dropping, both of places and just things in general, not all of which was actually super story relevant. So a lot of that is stored away for later. Made a lot of notes in case things crop up again, which I'm sure they will. The book is really descriptive, but reserves most of its atmospheric scene building for the scenes set in Elantris, for painting a really good picture of the interior of the city, which it did incredibly well. So much so that the rest of the world outside of Elantris kind of pales in comparison and feels a little bit 2D. A large portion of this book is dedicated to conflict between two sects of the same religion who worship different aspects of the same god. I'm not a huge fan of the sort of Frollo archetype villain, the religious zealot baddie, but I think this book did it really well. What this book did was you had three storylines running very close together, tied together really closely, not really giving the spotlight to any one of the three. In each of the stories you have the characters striving for their own thing, with their own personal development, their own obstacles and adversaries. And so even with Harathan, somebody who's painted very early on as the bad guy, you do have points where you're rooting for him to overcome things because he's written as a character you can sympathise with. There's a lot of court politics in this book, but it is kept interesting, so well done for that. It's pretty hard to do. With all the characters as well, there's a large amount of this character is doing the thing, the other characters are unaware of it, but you as a reader know what's going on with all three people. So you're constantly on the edge of your seat waiting for the moments where the storylines do come together and the characters see the same big picture that you see. That's all I can really give you that's non-spoiler stuff, so it's going to be spoilers from here on out. There'll be timestamps at the bottom bar if you want to skip to different bits of this. So, things I liked. I love the idea of the magic system and how it works. Really original, and it was giving me so many misdirection bits as I tried to understand it. I was constantly trying to figure out the problem, coming up with loads of different theories, and they were all wrong. My original one reading it was that humans were in some way corrupted, which was interrupting the flow of Dor, somehow not allowing that to come through. And the Sheod made humans able to channel the Dor that was already flowing through them. But then it turned out that it was actually tied to the geography of the land. Really like that. I also love with the magic system, it hints at the existence of other magic systems right at the end to sort of hammer in, while this was a whole book, it's a tiny sliver of everything that's going on. Harathan, I really liked him. I really liked him as a bad guy. And it wasn't like, this is a bad guy who eventually will turn good. It was like, this is a bad guy who's having a lot of issues with his henchmen and his religious order. He's having a crisis of faith. It wasn't so much a redemption arc for him. And it's not like he realizes his religion is wrong. He realizes that he's been interpreting it wrong, following orders which are wrong, addresses some things about extremism within religion. At the end of the day, he's still Derethi. He doesn't change that, even though he saves the day and saves the lives of people who are not. I like how it didn't paint an entire religion as evil, which would have been easy and lazy. Honestly, I liked all the characters. While Harathan and Serene did advance through the story and sort of overcome their problems through guile, Raoden's was mostly luck and having Galadon around as a calm sort of Jiminy Cricket voice of reason. I thought it was good that he didn't use his title and status to exert influence, and I get why he didn't do that. Outside of the main three characters, and because you only get things from their point of view, a lot of the other main characters, side characters, do feel kind of like set pieces, but I don't think that detracted much from the story. In terms of characters, I don't read a lot for romance subplots, and I actually think that part of why I liked this book so much was that it had Serene and Raoden working so closely together that they had better things to do than pine for each other. they put aside that and they were like, I've got business. There's not a lot of romance in this book at all. If you go into it expecting that, you will be disappointed. I love the idea of Seons. The complex Aeons at their core felt to me almost like sentient computer programs coded with spells. The idea of those was so cool. Even if it instantly made me picture Serene as Ilonwe from Black Cauldron, blonde princess, helpful glowy ball. I like the idea of how the country was painted and the setting, which was about what happens when an authority figure collapses and there is a void of power. Who really has the right to do what? There's a lot of self-proclamation and violence that can follow that kind of event. I like how, even though these new power ladders have sprung up around Elantris, they're all sort of subdued because they have the ruined city on their doorstep as a kind of monument. So you have the people with a lot of hatred towards it, which I'm guessing personally would dissipate were the city not right there, and the people who live in hope that something's going to happen and these helpful, powerful people are going to come back. Hope versus hate is an interesting conflict, and one that probably wouldn't work further in the future than when it's set. It works because there are people who are alive that remember Elantris as it was, and the memories of Elantris for the most part are good. And when they're not good, that's even more interesting because it's so rare. Like with Dilaf's sister, I think, being one of the first victims of the Riad, which was misunderstood as malicious intent by the Elantrians. Things I wasn't too keen on. You don't get a lot of physical description in the way of characters outside of their clothes, the way they dress, the way they act. Outside of Kian is fat, Elantrians are gross. But every single Serene chapter was like, she's tall. Don't forget she's tall. She's very tall. Make sure you remember that. She's a tall lady. I was like, okay, we know now. We know that. Was it put in as a constant reminder that she's so unhappy with herself, that she's self-conscious, as a sort of motivator to act a certain way in the eyes of others? I don't know, but it was like kind of jarring. I would have loved a more in-depth look at Kay and the fleeting glimpse we got of Teod right at the end. I would have liked a bit more scene building outside of Elantris, just a little bit. This was probably sacrificed in editing because it's a fantasy book, and I'm not sure whether this will be a pattern in the rest of Sanderson's stuff, but it's very dialogue heavy. And I guess since you are only following these three main characters, you don't get to be that objective, removed, eye-in-the-sky observer. You see what they see, and your attention is on what their attention is on. Honestly, though, there isn't a huge amount I can pull this book up on, but I'm sure there would be if I'd read some other work of Sanderson's and read this further down the line, because a lot of his other stuff is considered miles better. I think I'm glad that I don't have anything else yet to compare this to. Okay, questions I have going forward and things that I'm excited about. We had the appearance of Hoyd right at the end in the special edition bit, and his kind of weird antimatter Seon with him. Then he jumped into the dissolvey pool and disappeared. Died, maybe? I was told to keep an eye out for Hoyd, so I'm excited to find out who he is, what he's about, what his whole endgame deal is. I think he must be some kind of time traveller, some kind of somebody from outside the world as we know it who sort of pops in to be an observer. Also, his antimatter Seon implies that there are a lot of ways to create Seons. I'd like to know more about them in general, where that idea came from. The magic system is geography-based, tied to the land, we know this. It's also mentioned that Aeons appear as constellations. Is that linked in? Would the same failure of magic happen if one of the stars winked out? Or is it the fact that there's a big coincidence with constellations, geography and Aeons, that makes it seem magical? And so the people's belief that Aeon Door is magic is what makes it magic. Is it all about faith? Does it draw power from its own coincidentality? Is Aeon Door the only magic system that is geography-based? I'm assuming it is, because Raoden's magic got terrible when he flitted over the sea to Teod. But Dilaf's magic and the monk's magic worked perfectly fine in a completely different location. I'd also like to know about the roles that gods play in this universe. Are they real? Are they just myth/faith-based? And we have holy books about their antics like on Earth? Or have they had an actual factual role in history and people have seen them? Are there believers and non-believers, or is it concrete fact that the gods are real beings, that they exist and intervene? Many questions. I know. Read on, find out for most of this, right? I'm just thinking out loud. These are the answers that I cannot wait for. If you're reading along this year with me with any of the COSMERE read-alongs, make sure you comment any of your theories down below if this is your first time reading, but no spoilers for further books. I don't want this journey to be ruined, this journey of magical discovery. The live show for the Elantris discussion is going to be over on Books Before Death on the 30th of January. And the next book we're going to be reading in February is Warbreaker. So stay tuned for that. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you can stay tuned to the rest of the Sanderson read-along, my thoughts on it. Follow me on Twitter, join the Discords. Thanks for watching this review. I'll see you soon for the next one. Bye!